Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing great today. My name is Josh Dubois of JD Strategic. We are on episode 2 of the Conquer the Mind podcast because I'm a big believer if you can conquer the mind, you can really conquer anything in this world. So we have a very special guest today. Jenna Spadaccino is going to be on the podcast. She is a franchise developer manager at Homewatch CareGivers, which is one of the 300 plus opportunities that I represent as a broker in franchising. And we are going to find out about Jenna's background as well as Homewatch CareGivers and really just dive into all things franchising today. So Jenna, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think, you're a really special guest. I know we had already kind of connected and, we really resonated in terms of, I always say the three things that really I'm passionate about are really the financial freedom, the lifestyle freedom, but really the biggest thing is having that impact on other people's lives. And Homewatch CareGivers really aligns the financial freedom with that passion. So you're really combining the passion with the profit with this opportunity. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into it and really learn about your background, what brought you here, and all about Homewatch CareGivers today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So I think what's super beneficial, just kind of as a young entrepreneur, we'll also kind of dive into people that are in corporate America, but just kind of starting off, kind of your background, kind of high school, college. A lot of people don't necessarily what they want to do growing up. I know I even graduated from college with still no idea what I wanted to do. And, my younger sister's kind of going through that same process right now. And there's just so many people that graduate not really sure what they want to do. So can you help people understand, where were you at that time? Was the path always franchising, or what was kind of your mindset at high school, college?
No, the path was never intended for franchising, actually, which is it's pretty funny. But I just remember for my younger years that I always had a passion to help others. I was always that person that was willing to help
Mm,
my friends, my family, coworkers as I got
yeah,
into working. So I've always had that innate passion, to help others. So
yeah.
for me, when I went to college at a private Catholic university in Northeast Philadelphia, Holy Family
Mm,
University, and at first, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I did start to major in communications and journalism. And at
okay.
that point, social media was becoming more and more. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm a millennial and I'll proudly say that. So I didn't get my first, cell phone until I was 16, and that was like
yeah,
the Virgin Mobile where you had to buy the minutes to load it up and everything like that, and texting.
yeah.
And
I
so,
remember my first flip phone with the keyboard. People
yeah.
will never remember that stuff.
Yeah. So it really, I mean, there was no social media content
Yeah,
curators and all these different jobs that there are now. So for me and what I thought communications would be journalism, because I did
yeah.
like to write. I had a couple poems published when I was younger,
Oh,
in
wow.
middle school. Nothing crazy, but so I did have a passion for writing. So I was like, maybe journalism could be a path for me.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I did graduate, with a bachelor's of science and or bachelor of arts, I'm sorry, in communications. I minored in marketing. So really, once I got out of college, really it- I tried to do different jobs. Now, during
Yeah.
college, I worked throughout my whole time. So I didn't necessarily have the typical college experience where I went away. I mean, I commuted, I still worked, I still, managed a full-time job with full-time school just because I needed to financially to help my family.
Yeah.
And turns out later on I learned, but really my first real job was working for a multi-unit franchisee.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, I mean, I had no idea at the time that it was a franchise. It was a children's inflatable party franchise called Bounce You, and there was one that opened up.
Yeah.
And so all my friends were like, let's go get a job here. It would be so fun. You're just jumping on
Mhm.
inflatables all day and taking, care of people that have their parties there. So I was like, okay, great. So I ended up working there for about 5 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
worked my way up all the way to a front desk manager, so the person that's actually kind of doing the sales, booking the events, whether they're birthday
Yeah.
parties or other events that happen there. And to me, it was just, it was a job, but we developed a family,
Yeah.
and that cohesion there. And so, for me, it wasn't, oh, this is a franchise. And I mean, I didn't have any idea. And then the
Yeah.
owner opened up a second location and he was like, can you go work for me over here? And I said, okay, great. That's awesome. You're expanding.
Mm.
That's great. Um, so it was just something to do during college,
Yeah.
honestly.
So you're managing all that on top of college courses.
Yeah.
And what was the position you started off in the franchising world and worked your way up to the desk manager?
Um, so the first position was, it's called a party pro. So it's
Uh,
essentially, there were two people that would be assigned to any events. And so you would be the one really helping with the safety precautions on the inflatables, really help to also
yeah.
uh just amplify the party experience, and a lot of this was for little kids, like little, younger kids would have their parties here. We actually
Yeah.
had our after prom party there. Like, or the
Oh
owner
my
let us have our
God.
after prom party there, which is like a ton of fun. But yeah, so I started out as a party pro and then essentially was that for a couple years and then promoted to the front desk manager.
That's awesome. And I know that kind of reminds me of going back to my high school days. We kind of had a manager at a dry cleaning franchise that did the semi-absentee model and really
Mhm.
left it up to me to kind of manage that store in the owner's absence. And it's just those skills that you learn at a young age, kind of more those hands-on roles that you speak about, really kind of teach you these lifelong lessons. Can you speak about some of the kind of the lessons you learned and kind of the while you're balancing college courses and how beneficial were your college courses compared to the work you were doing in the franchising world on top of that?
I mean, the job was a lot of responsibility. I mean,
Yeah.
there's obviously a checklist of things that you have to ensure throughout the day on top of trying to upsell and get events booked. I mean, obviously I was dealing with all of the money coming in and having to make sure that that was all squared away at the end of the night, putting it in the safe. Obviously making sure that um, the employee showed up on time. If we didn't, then we
Yeah.
had to try to figure out, could we pull somebody else from the front to have them go in and help, and getting
Yeah.
people checked in. So it was a lot of multitasking, but again,
Mhm.
really a lot of responsibility for me. And I mean, even from a young age, I've had a lot of responsibility just because of, illnesses that both my parents had. So it just, it,
Mhm.
it forced me to have more responsibility. So for
Yeah.
me, I was able to kind of take it on head on
Mhm.
without any issues and be able to juggle it. So I would work like nights and weekends and then just do
Wow.
college courses during the day.
Mhm.
So when I was doing that for really all 4 years of college.
Mhm. That's awesome. And I know you mentioned multi-unit. For the viewers that don't know what multi-unit is, can you kind of dive into what a multi-unit operation is and how that differs from just a single unit?
Yeah, I mean, so the owner, when I had first started working for him, he just had one location with this franchise,
Mhm.
Bounce You. And I think it was maybe a year and a half to 2 years in, he decided to open up a second location, which was about maybe 40 minutes away, but you had to get on the turnpike to get there. So, having both of those locations, I mean, he was obviously able to um, save on staff. And so we were
Mhm.
kind of like going between both locations, but obviously looking to hire more people. So
Yeah.
it really was an expansion of his current portfolio.
Hmm.
So obviously, he only ended up having two, so it was just those two
Okay.
locations. So it didn't grow any further than that. But obviously, having more than one to really be able to scale for his
Yeah.
family.
No, that's a perfect opportunity. And it's cool. There's so many different ways to get involved, whether it's single unit, multi-unit, or even starting with one and changing it up. So, there's no like you're locked in with one opportunity. It's interesting how in corporate America, a lot of people when they do the job interviews, the number one thing that people talk about, especially when I was interviewing at a young age, it's always where's the growth opportunities, and franchising really provides those growth opportunities for people at all these different levels. So it's so fascinating to kind of watch all these different success stories play out.
Absolutely. I know for me, and one thing that always really, got my blood boiling was when, I got out of college and then I started doing all the interviews with the different
Yeah.
companies. It was always like, well, you don't have enough experience. And
Yeah.
everything always required 3 to 4 years of experience. And like, yes,
Yeah.
I don't have experience in this exact role, but
Mm,
let me explain to you all the other skills that I have that would be relative to this role and what I've done in the
yeah.
past. So that really, I remember having up on my wall, like all the places that I interviewed. And it honestly, it took a year and a half. And I kept feeling defeated and defeated because I would do these interviews and they were with big companies like Dietz and Watson and food companies,
Yeah.
Comcast. And so I kept it on my wall to say, you had the chance to interview with these companies. You didn't get it, but you had the chance to interview and not everybody does.
Yeah.
So just to kind of keep me motivated and positive. And so the first job out of college was actually where I interned, which was Clear Channel Outdoor, which is outdoor advertising like billboards.
Mm. That's so funny that you bring that up, because when I was applying for colleges, I would literally print out like the college logo, and if they rejected me, I'd put it up on the wall as kind of motivation. And I did the same thing as I was in college, kind of, or yeah, as I was kind of finalizing college, applying for all these different jobs, all the companies that would reject me, I put the logo up, and it was kind of just my motivation to just find other ways to actually make it happen. And
Yeah.
it's funny, all these different things really just do end up happening for a reason, where in the moment it seems super frustrating and trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure it all out.
Yep, absolutely.
But going back to your franchising experience, you kind of started off early
Yeah.
on. And I also know you had experience at Rita's Italian Ice and
Mm-hmm.
Monster Tree, from what I'm aware of. So can you explain how that transition works? So you graduated college, kind of in the franchising world already. What was kind of that process after that, besides kind of applying to all these different jobs that needed 10 to 12 years experience?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was just finding, I wanted to utilize my degree. I didn't want
Yeah.
to be the person, and at the time, I thought, it was kind of frowned upon to where I had friends that got jobs at, the grocery store or they went to retail instead. And I'm like, I didn't pay for this degree not
Yeah.
to be able to use it, and I want to use it because this is what I want to do.
Right.
So I really started to focus on sales and marketing roles. So again, started with Clear Channel,
Mhm.
and just for different reasons, really wanted to make a change and
Yeah.
saw an opportunity for a franchise sales associate. Zero
Yeah.
idea again at the time what franchise sales is. Okay. And so I looked at the description and I'm like, I've done all of these things.
Mhm.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So, um, actually, now that I'm thinking and talking out loud about it, going back, a couple years before,
Yeah.
actually, before I started, getting into Clear Channel, I did apply for Rita's. I did
Okay.
have an extensive interview, but it was for a training role and I didn't get it. So I
Mhm.
kept in touch with the HR manager. And this is
Yeah.
what I tell all my friends, at the time, and then even, people and that I know now that are looking right out of college. I say, you never know what will
Mhm.
happen from the people that you meet. You just
Yeah.
don't know. So for me, what I did, I maintained, I don't know, somewhat of a relationship with the HR person. And so I
Yeah.
would continually look on the website and see when roles would come up that maybe I could align with. And
Yeah.
so this happened with this role, this franchise sales associate. And so I reached out and she already had my resume and she's like, great, when can you come in and have an interview?
Yeah.
So I was like, this is amazing, right? Because, I kept my insistence, I guess you could say,
Yeah,
my perseverance, I don't know. But she remembered me, and so that was kind of how I got into it. But again, it was really more um marketing focused on the collateral for franchise development, and then
yeah,
everything just kind of flew out from there of like, adding on responsibilities and doing more. And so,
yeah,
was there for a while and then came over to Authority Brands. So with, made a switch from food and beverage to the home services space and started
yeah,
working with the Cleaning Authority, Monster Tree Service. They're both number one in their categories, fantastic brands, but again, all a part of the Authority Brands umbrella. So, and
yeah.
that's where last year I had the opportunity to come on to Homewatch CareGivers.
That's awesome. And I kind of want to trace back because I feel like you just dropped some gold right there with just the fact of how important it is to build relationships and not really get frustrated because, the more no's you get, you really know just means next opportunity. So the more people the more hands you shake, it's just there's really nothing that can go wrong. Like a lot of people, especially with marketing, I talk to a lot of people with how to build their social media and they
Mhm.
overthink it. Marketing is really just about the number of people that know you. So the more people you outreach to, the more people you build connections with. So I think that's a really good point and something that I always recommend. If you're trying to get a job somewhere, you want to show people that you're actually serious about that. So go onto LinkedIn, look at the company, look at the people there, reach out to them, actually show an interest in that company because you got to understand these companies get thousands and thousands of applications. So trying to differentiate yourself and actually showing that genuine interest. So I definitely wanted to bring that up. That's a really good point right there. Just the fact of how important relationships are. And it may not mean anything in that moment, but
Yeah,
3, 5 years down the road, you really never know what could happen.
it's so true.
So you kind of, it's kind of interesting from the food service to home care service. What were kind of the lessons in the food industry and were you able to make that transition?
I mean, obviously it's a different animal with food and beverage, of course, but I think for where it was being in the frozen treat industry, it's its own unique niche because it's not
Mhm.
like you're having a full-fledged Burger King that you have
Yeah.
to operate. So it's certainly smaller operations, but um,
Mhm.
again, because of where I live, it's just there's a huge brand affinity for Rita's Italian Ice. And so that
Yeah.
we originated in this area and now it's across the country. So I think it was really leading with passion
Mm.
um, for just the memories that you could create by being there and by going there with family just to celebrate little moments. So when
Yeah.
I thought about, again, I knew that again, was looking for another opportunity. And
Right.
for me, I had done a lot of research on the home service industry. And at this point now, it was 2019 going into 2020, and that's when COVID
Mm.
started happening, and I
Yeah.
started hearing the phrase recession resistant.
Yeah.
So that came up a lot, and I was just thinking about, what are the opportunities? What are things that and areas of interest that people are looking at when they're looking to leave their job? What makes
Yeah.
sense financially? What makes sense from a lifestyle perspective, like you mentioned?
Mm.
So that was when I was really attracted to Authority Brands and really wanted to get in the door that way. And I first started with
Yeah.
the Cleaning Authority.
That's funny. You bring up like two of the magic words and recession resistant, and probably the other magic word would be systems when it comes to franchising. So it's funny that you bring up how important that is. And that's funny. Can you speak about kind of during COVID,
Mm.
how, as kind of a franchise developer, how were you getting a lot of opportunities during COVID compared to previous times? And how was the outlook during that?
Um, I I can't say that I was looking heavily pre-COVID,
Hmm.
but for me, during that time, there there were definitely opportunities. Obviously, things were virtual at that point,
Yeah.
right? So starting to look into that, and then even leading into 2021, which is when I actually, started with Authority Brands. But
Mm.
um, just a lot of opportunity to really figure out what I wanted to do. And so,
Mm.
I mean, I feel like so much was an unknown
Yeah.
for a lot of businesses. So, I was obviously keeping my feelers out and looking
Right.
at opportunities that seemed to be a right fit,
Mm.
not just looking for the next thing that's available, like something
Right.
that I aligned with, and that I really felt like I could have an opportunity to advance and enhance my skills.
Yeah. And I know, just when I spoke with you on the phone, it was so obvious that you had that passion. And it wasn't just really a job, it was really just something that you were passionate about. And that's why I'm so excited to really have you on today. And you're dropping a lot of knowledge for the viewers. So I'm very excited. And now that we're kind of 20 minutes in and we're talking about senior care, but people may not even know what senior care is. So could we just dive into, for someone maybe think about franchising, maybe not think about franchising, what is kind of the senior care industry? And, there's a lot kind of different elements in senior care, from just home care, some medical care and non-medical care. Can you kind of just give like a general overview of what the industry looks like, and then kind of dive into where Homewatch lays in the mix of
Yes,
everything?
absolutely. So senior care, home care, huge industry. At this point, just to kind of drop a couple of stats, there's 10,000
Yeah.
people every day turning 65. So those baby boomers,
Mm.
right? They're turning 65, 10,000 every
Yeah.
day. So at this point, based
Huh.
on how we're tracking, by 2035, the 60 and over population will outnumber the 20 and under population.
Oh,
So
wow. You got to say
thinking,
that one again. That's crazy.
yeah,
People
by
65 are gonna outnumber the people that are how old?
20 and under, so
Wow,
children, so to speak.
that's
Yeah, at
crazy.
least where we are right now, and what the trajectory
Yeah,
looks like. So when you think about recession resistant, when you think about even just the sheer amount of need,
yeah,
today, tomorrow, and going forward. So it's not, a trendy business. It's a need. It's an essential business, right?
yeah.
Um, Many people that are looking for care, a lot of people think about senior care, when
Right.
they think about home care, just because a lot of times, seniors and the aging population might not have a lot of support at home from family or friends or networks nearby.
Okay.
So when you think about, what does senior care, what's comprised of that?
Mm.
So there's a lot of different components, but just to kind of break it down and simplify, you essentially have your medical and your non-medical components
Okay.
of home care. Now, with Homewatch CareGivers, we primarily do service seniors, but we really like to say we're people care, not senior care, because we can help
Okay.
anyone that needs care. So
Mm.
you think about, okay, you have your senior segment, the aging population that will need care, and they want to age in their home where they're comfortable in their environment. But what
Yeah.
about other people? What about mothers postpartum that
Right.
need assistance after they give birth? What
Mm.
about children or young adults with
Mm.
intellectual and developmental disability? What
Mm.
about even people like you or I? And say, I don't know, we break a bone, we need major
Yeah.
surgery, and we come home, and
Mm.
all the things that we were able to do going up and down the steps, preparing meals for ourselves,
Yeah.
we can't do that at that time. And you
Mm.
may or may not have family support around you. So what do you do
Yeah.
in that instance, right? And so
Mm.
that's really where home care can come in. That's where the non-medical services can come in with what we provide at Homewatch Caregivers. So
Mm.
um, there's a couple key components of non-medical, right? So
Yeah.
you have companion care, which companion care is really used to help combat primarily loneliness in the aging population. That
Okay.
is honestly an epidemic in the aging
Mhm.
population. So that loss of social interaction, that
Yeah.
isolation, this is even pre-COVID, that
Yeah.
this is happening, right? So this isn't new.
Mhm.
So really, being with the client through those, social interactive activities,
Mhm.
also helping them in more homemaker services like meal preparation, light
Okay.
house cleaning. Maybe they need transportation to the grocery store or the doctors, right? But
Yeah.
then you do get into the more physical interaction with clients. And so we reference that as personal care. And
Okay.
that's going to be helping and assisting them through the activities of daily living. So you think about
Mhm.
just your basics, you know, uh, hygiene, grooming, ambulation, so walking assistance, right? Maybe
Yeah.
transportation assistance from a bed to a chair for somebody that's homebound. So there's
Mhm.
all of those services, and so many people, whether they have, chronic illnesses,
Yeah.
or they have dementia, Alzheimer's,
Mhm.
even people that might have cancer. I mean, you just think about
Yeah.
all the people that could potentially need this type of care.
Mhm.
Um,
So what,
and
no, yeah, keep going on the third
so
part.
Yeah, and then so you have a medical component.
Okay.
So the medical component obviously will include, providing medications to clients. So medication management that can include shots,
Mhm.
infusion therapies, more skilled services.
Okay. And do most are you able to do medical and non-medical? Is that like an option where people do both, or what's kind of the outlook on that?
So it will be an option in 2024 to
Wow.
offer the private duty nursing,
Mhm.
skilled service line for our franchisees. Obviously, we wouldn't want to start them off day one. We obviously want to
Yeah.
ease them in with the non-medical, and then of course, phase in the medical component. But it will be an option
Hmm.
for our franchisees next year.
That's awesome. We got breaking news on the podcast today. But there is something kind of more special about the personal and companion care where rather than kind of a doctor performing a service, it's more kind of that 24/7 service where you're having someone reoccurring kind of watching over someone rather than, just giving someone a shot that they may need once a year or something like that. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually client dependent. It's really dependent
Mhm.
on what they need. So someone could
Yeah,
be a caregiver could be in the house for 3 hours, or it could be up to 24-hour, care that's needed depending on where the client is with their needs.
okay, that's awesome. And so you first opened back in 1980, was it?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
now it's 40 years of progress. How has it kind of changed over the years? And as you say, you're adding medical care, so there's constant innovations. The technology
Yes.
is always changing. So can you just speak on kind of the changes over the years and what kind of franchise owners have to look forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at, where we started, which by the way, the company first started by the original founder, and
Mhm.
the company was first called Homewatch, and it
Okay.
was just pet sitting and house sitting. So it wasn't
Oh,
even home
wow.
care. But he started getting all these requests from his family and different
Yeah.
people in his network to watch, elderly parents and different people. So really just kind of flourished into a greater need for
Yeah.
in-home care. So that's when he rebranded in 1980. So, but obviously it's evolved, from
Yeah.
a privately owned, mom and pop business to building a franchise system.
Yeah.
Been franchising for close to 30 years,
Wow.
1996. And, again, back in 2017, we were brought under Authority Brands umbrella.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of opportunity for growth within
Mhm.
the infrastructure and building the
Right.
support and the systems for our franchisees, and we're just really excited with where things are going. There's been
Yeah.
obviously continual improvements. There's a lot happening with technology and innovation, and kind of bringing that into the point of home care and providing a total care solution. So we'll
Yeah.
be, launching more of those opportunities as well as we go along, but it's really
Mhm.
certainly come a long way in the past 40 years.
That's incredible. And it's just amazing when you just look at how long, a new business typically lasts, the numbers on 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. And it's like such a small percentage of businesses that actually make it. And when you hear of like an opportunity to join a business that has that 40-year track record with the systems in place, the technology is always updating. And, you started with the demographics and, those numbers blew my mind. So that's crazy. But definitely something interesting to kind of pay attention to. And I know you also mentioned being part of Authority Brands. Can you kind of speak on that relationship and what year did they kind of take over Homewatch and what does that relationship look like? What does that provide you guys with additional resources? How does that work?
Yeah, so it provides us a lot of additional resources. So we were the first acquisition. So Authority Brands was really initiated through the cleaning authority. So that was really the impetus for it. And then we were the first big acquisition underneath Authority Brands. So we're
Hmm.
kind of the little baby of the family as far as that goes. But there's a lot of resources for our franchisees from a marketing perspective,
Yeah.
consumer, obviously on the development side as well. So there's been a lot of opportunities to really support franchisees through these shared services for marketing,
Mhm.
for obviously, vendor relationships,
Yeah.
through buying relationships for even like fleet management for vehicles or
Yeah.
insurance, all of those things. There's been those cost effective opportunities for our franchisees that we've been able to develop and, provide for all of our brands.
Yeah, and those are some powerful things that you just said because as I'm speaking with people on the phone every day, those are really the questions they have. The vendors, the relationships, the pricing, the access to employees. So the ability that you guys have the systems in place, so now I think we understand how the franchise works and how the systems really are in place. What's kind of the ideal candidate that you guys are looking for? Do you need to have that medical background? What are you guys looking for with the ideal franchise owner?
So for Homewatch caregivers, it's so interesting to say that the majority of our franchise owners, when they came into this business, had zero medical home care background. It's really the minority of our owners that actually have experience. So
Yeah,
for most of our owners, they came from corporate America and they were looking
mm,
to obviously be their own boss and
yeah,
create, financial freedom and a lifestyle. And I think, something else that really prevails more is the fact that they were looking for a business where they could be meaningful and provide an impact in their communities and
yeah,
also see that physical impact, right? So see the people that you're helping, see the difference that you're making and enriching the lives of clients and their family
yeah,
members. Because, I mean, this is one of the most personal services. I mean, you're dealing with people at
mm,
very vulnerable times in their life. Some are,
yeah,
near, end of life. Others have just had, tragic events or accidents or surgeries or, some
yeah,
debilitating diseases, right? And so it's so important for us to have that passion to support people and
right,
especially, candidates to have that passion to support people and others in their community and of course
mm,
build teams, without
yeah,
there's no business without caregivers. So it doesn't
mm,
matter how many clients that you have, the caregiver is certainly the asset of the business. So that's,
mm,
from that perspective, leading with that passion, obviously having the financial, wherewithal that we would require, but no, there's no requirement for a medical background at all. Can it
yeah,
help? Absolutely. What would also be beneficial are those that are probably a little bit more extroverted, that are,
mm,
being able
yeah,
to engage and build relationships and network with people, because
yeah.
that's going to be a huge part of any business, but specifically this business.
Yeah, no, it's super powerful. And the idea of combining passion with profit and having the business where you're really just creating that asset over time. Whereas people, they have the salary and they may even they look at a lot of times people first think about when they look at franchising, they want to see how much am I going to make on that annual basis.
Mhm.
and they start to compare it to their day job and start to see, can I transition out of this? But what people don't realize is you're building that asset over time that you have control over. And not only that, rather than kind of year after year, kind of waiting for, maybe the salary increase, you kind of have that control over your future. And, if you want to make more money, you put the resources in place and the systems are already there. So it's just so powerful where, if you are someone looking to make a difference in your community and also achieve that financial freedom and generational wealth aspect, it really does seem like just such a cool opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so as we kind of speak about the ideal candidate and some of the kind of traits you guys look for, as potentially they speak with me, we figure out they could potentially be a qualified candidate. I provide that introduction. Can you kind of walk someone through what that process looks like and how it really is kind of that education process, and they're really brought through that step-by-step process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure a lot of times when you're working with candidates, I mean, they may or may not have already started the process of understanding what a franchise is and what
Yeah,
really the benefits are. Some are, simultaneously doing their research and looking for another corporate job, but also maybe
right.
entertaining franchising a little bit, dipping their toes in the water. So it really is
Yeah.
so important for first and foremost the education piece. So
Mm,
really starting at the foundation and helping them understand who we are, what we do, and really the value. Because when someone looks at the fees associated with the franchise, I mean, the question is like, well, what am I getting for what I'm
yeah,
paying? What is the
yeah,
support? Because I know the support will vary based on the system, right? Based on the
right.
brand. So it's really what is your unique value proposition, right? For
Yeah.
for your brand and how will you differentiate yourself and how can you differentiate yourself from the
Mm,
competition? So I think going through that education first, helping
yeah,
them understand how we will be supporting them, pre-opening, ongoing, of course, and what are all the
right.
resources that are going to be at their fingertips. And even more so, talk about the benefit of being a franchise owner and being a part of the network. Because as
Mm,
much as we look at the systems in place, which obviously are very integral to what a franchise is,
right.
I think it's also forgotten about what the value is to have other franchisees that mentor and
Mm,
help each other because they've all been
right,
there and done that. They've come before you and really kind of
right,
figured things out and have gone through struggles and triumphs and all those things. So it's so important to also build relationships with your fellow franchisees.
right. That's so powerful, and it's a good point when, as a potential candidate, think about what's the right franchise for you. Thinking about an emerging brand or a brand that's had that 40-year track record, and thinking about the validation process is so critical so that you really can validate what
Right.
that potential decision looks like. So having, dozens and dozens of people that you can call, people in similar markets to where you are, and you're really going to see not only what the financials look like, but the lifestyle, how long it'll take you to get that ROI, the cash flow positive, all these tough questions that can be tough for us to answer with
Mhm.
regulations. You are actually able to get these questions answered. No one's really hiding this from you. It's not like, oh, you can only pick our top 5 franchise owners that are crushing it. You can
Right.
call any franchise owner. You're going to see, are people selling franchises? You're going to see everything. So I always say people aren't asking you to buy a business on day 1 or even day 30. It's really just that step-by-step education process. So it's so powerful that you speak about that. And one other powerful thing that you mentioned is the marketing fees. So a lot of times people will ask, what's the franchise fee for? And then, oh, there's marketing fees on top of that. So can you kind of speak upon what's the franchise fee for? And then what's the point of paying marketing fees on top of that for someone that's kind of, people are curious, why am I getting this expense left and right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the initial franchise fee, obviously, number one, you're paying to operate under the trademarks and licenses of the brand that you're going to
Yeah.
be signing on for, and obviously, there's going to be money that will be used to train the franchisee because, at least in
Mm,
our system, our training for our owners is free to them, but obviously that's
Right.
going to be encompassed out of the franchise fee, right? So as far as the initial fee, it's obviously to be able to operate under the licenses and trademarks of the brand.
Yeah.
You know, marketing is such a important piece of
Mhm.
any business, and I
Yeah.
think when owners try to look at it and kind of maybe cut corners or try to operate a little lean, I feel like marketing is the thing that always ends up suffering to some degree.
Mhm.
Because when you think about, at least in this business, right? What is marketing? Marketing for what? Marketing for clients, marketing for recruitment for employees, your caregivers. So there's marketing on a
Right.
couple different sides, right? So there's obviously in most brands, there's going to be a national fund that all franchisees are going to pay into. And
Right.
that's obviously going to support overall the brand and the processes and the assets that are going to be created to help the franchisees go out in their
Yeah.
communities to really, again, strengthen the relationships and market their business. And then
Right.
everyone generally has a local marketing, and some do co ops. We don't have that, but it's local marketing, obviously, that they're going to be doing locally, that
Mhm.
they're going out and they're partnering with different organizations, or they're
Right.
doing job fairs or industry events to really, again, build those relationships.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful. And I kind of always think of the franchise fee. It's kind of like giving you the keys to Disney World, and you can do whatever you want with that. And then the marketing fees are they're going to give you all the systems in place to get the customers. It's just a matter of how many customers you actually want to get with that. So it really is just it's not like a fee of anything. It's really just to help your business market so that you can continue to get that ROI that you're the person is looking for. So it all makes sense. And as a candidate, they make a decision, they sign the paper, they're super excited. What does the process look like to get started? And then, being a home service business over a retail, you've kind of had some experience in the retail industries as well. Is it a lot easier for a franchise owner to get operating?
Well, I think from a timeline perspective, it definitely can be because, while food service, they're going to have probably a more elaborate build out. We don't.
Yeah.
So we do require a small office space. But it's not, we're not, again, building out a QSR or anything like that. So it's a, smaller overhead.
Mhm.
But, from with home services, with home care specifically, there are a lot of licensing and regulations depending on the state. So there are certain
Yeah.
states for home care, regardless of what brand that your client would be looking at,
Mhm.
that some states do have regulations on how an agency has to operate in that state, from
Okay.
training, from certain requirements of their employees,
Mhm.
all those different things. There's licensing costs associated. So it's really important for us as we go through the discovery process too with candidates that we have a call specifically dedicated to regulations so that they
Mhm.
understand well before making any decision, well before we would potentially approve them, of course,
Right.
to be a franchisee, that they understand what they would be getting into.
Hmm. That's interesting. Are there any states that are like super tough with senior care, that like someone should like definitely stay away from, or how does that kind of outlook work? How is it easy to get registered, or what's the process typically look like?
I don't want to deter anyone from opening,
Yeah.
obviously, but there are some states that take longer times for licensing than others.
Mhm.
There's a little over 30 states right now that do have some sort of licensing or regulations. Most average 60 to 90 days, but some states could
Okay.
take a little bit over a year. So
Yeah.
it just all depends. So that's why we work with each candidate through that process.
Okay, that's super helpful, Jenna. And as we kind of speak about the candidate and kind of trying to get a picture of what their day in the life would look like, and I understand in franchising, we talked about the multi-unit and there's kind of different participation types, different ownership models. Can you speak about what participation types and ownership models are offered and what kind of the day in the life would look like with that system?
Absolutely. So majority of our franchise owners are owner operators. So meaning
Okay,
that they are in the business full time.
okay,
A lot of our owners really handle the sales and marketing of the business. We call that the
mhm,
community, networking relations, role. And so they
yeah,
will be out marketing with referral partners. So referral partners for home care, like doctors and hospitals and different
yeah,
facilities and VA hospitals, right? So they're going to be the people that they're going out and networking with through our training that we provide.
yeah,
But additionally, helping with whatever would be needed in the office,
mhm,
doing quality assurance visits with clients. So they're really the face
yeah,
of the business, right? That role's
okay,
the face of the business. And then they'd be hiring for an operations role. And operations, that person's really in the office most times, and they're
mhm,
going to be handling everything related to clients and caregivers. So like scheduling,
okay,
onboarding, training, invoicing, all of that. So from an owner operator perspective, the owner would be fulfilling one of those two full-time roles,
okay,
right? We have been offering semi-absentee ownership as a model as well. Now that comes with a
okay,
little bit, it's possible, okay, but it comes with a little bit of a caveat.
mhm,
So with being semi-absentee, especially in this business, it still
yeah,
will require a lot upfront in terms of
okay,
time, because we would, again, have them find their office space. They have to go through the licensing process, and they're the owner of the business, and they're
mhm,
making this investment. They should
yeah,
be involved in getting this up and running, right?
mhm,
But they do have to hire both full-time efforts at onset, since they wouldn't be fulfilling one of those roles. So from
okay,
that perspective, it will increase their investment level based on the salary of that second person.
yeah.
So just things to think about, but we do have some owners that operate that way now, and it can be an option depending on the candidate.
Yeah, that's super helpful, kind of just thinking about that. And with those different ownership types, with the semi-absentee, is the validation process a little bit different, or the process is going to be the same for people if they're interested in the different models, the participation types, it's still the same process for candidates interested in the different processes?
Yeah, I think it's still the same process as we do validation.
Yeah,
Obviously, there's not over 100 validators for semi-absentee, just like I said, because we
yeah,
started offering a couple years ago. But
mm,
certainly, there's also opportunities as well to speak with some owners that
yeah,
started hands-on, but now they are more semi-absentee in their business. So understanding that perspective too, and really why sometimes it might make sense to be owner operator in the beginning. So we just kind
okay.
of handle it from all angles.
Hmm. And for people that don't know, the semi-absentee is typically thought of where you put kind of a general manager in place that's really responsible for the business and the growth of the business. And for someone that was interested in that model, they start off very hands-on. I'm assuming probably like 40, 50 hours a week. And as they are able to manage that transition, how does it kind of look, a year, 2 years, 3 years later?
So obviously it's so different depending on the owner and how they're operating their business, but certainly it could be
Okay.
less hours as they're hiring those people to be in the office every day. So whether it's 20 hours or less than
Yeah.
that, to be able to be dedicating some general oversight in the business operations.
Okay, that's super helpful. And as kind of our times are winding down, there's always kind of three big things that I kind of hear from people, and we covered two of them. One, just kind of the ROI, and we talked about how you'll go through the education process, you'll get the financials, you'll look at everything, we'll see if you're comfortable with it. And then two, just the marketing support. We talked about how you're going to have the support, the systems in place. But three is kind of just the employees and kind of the concern with hiring the employees. Can you talk about, do you have any support and systems in place to help a
Yes.
franchise owner with that?
We do. We have a lot of recruitment and retention support within our brand, and it's something that
Awesome.
we pride ourselves on. We actually won an innovation award on a playbook that we put together this year
Mm,
for recruitment and retention. So we've really been able to develop best practices on how to support franchise owners with how to advertise for caregivers, where to
yeah,
advertise, what those advertisements look like, And it all really starts with culture. So really building a foundation of culture within their organization, and what that's going to look like. And again, how are they going to differentiate themselves, whether that's obviously pay will be competitive, whether they're
Yeah.
offering medical benefits or not. But we've also developed really the making of a caregiver program, because there's plenty of
Mhm.
people out there that might not already be working for a home care agency or be even in the industry at all,
Yeah.
but they have innate skills that, you know, like myself, right? Like I have
Mm.
passion and, a caring heart and compassion for others.
Right.
And in my opinion, I don't think you can teach those things. So if we
Mhm.
look at people like that, and maybe hospitality or education where they don't have home care skills, but they have those innate skills, well, we can
Yeah.
easily train them on home care skills. So
Mm.
it's how do we expand the labor pool? And so we work with franchisees through that process as well. And that's again, just all really high level, but there is a lot of support
Yeah.
that's provided with our brand through that.
That's super helpful, Jenna. And I feel like we've probably got a pretty good picture of Homewatch caregivers, and I'm definitely very grateful of your time as we kind of wind up the hour. So one kind of maybe one or two final questions for you as I kind of finalize my thoughts here. You've kind of worked for a couple of different franchises. What are some misconceptions that you see in the industry? A lot of times I always say people like to count themselves out before at least exploring the opportunity. So what are some misconceptions that you kind of hear from people that you found out aren't really as true?
Well, I think that most people, I don't want to say most, but I feel like a lot of people think that they have to have experience in the industry related to the brand. So whether it's home care, whether it's cleaning, whether it's
Yeah.
plumbing or HVAC, right? But the reality is that you don't, and we're a franchise for a reason, because there's the support and the training and the systems that is going to help you in your business,
Mhm.
and be able to be a franchise owner, and really build that generational wealth. So I think that is a common misconception that you need experience in
Yeah.
that specific area. I feel like that's a pretty big one.
Hmm. That's awesome. And just on kind of the final question, as someone that just has such a strong mindset and you're really passionate about this, what is someone trying to think of how to really phrase it? Sometimes it's easier when you kind of know kind of what your why is, what your purpose is. And it's a lot easier to do it when you're kind of doing it for other people rather than you're doing it for yourself, if that makes sense. So how are you able to, with your why just kind of being that passion to help other people? Can you speak on just the power of how powerful it is? Because a lot of people, they don't know what their why. Sometimes it's hard to even get out of bed, but someone that does have their why and their passion, you can just see how passionate you are about your role. And when I was with you on the phone, you can hear that passion. So how are you able to kind of find that passion for someone and kind of on the daily basis just be so passionate and wanted to help others?
I think for me personally, I mean, I just think about the experiences that I've had in my life. And
Hmm.
for me, I was a caregiver. So,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people, when they do look at this as a candidate, there's a story for them. So
Yeah.
why home care? Whether they came to you asking for it, or maybe you presented it to them and it really got them thinking. And it got them thinking about a greater purpose, and
Hmm.
what their purpose is. And
Yeah.
most people have a story. Most people have a story about someone that they know, that they've dealt with home care or some debilitating disease, and whether they've aided in the assistance as that happened, or they were a bystander. I think a lot of people have a story about that. And so
Mhm.
for me, that's my why. I do have a story.
Yeah.
um and I was a caregiver for both my parents, and they both passed away in the past couple years. So for me, and really looking at the trajectory for myself and thinking about, what is my purpose, what do I want to do, it's really help others. And that
Mhm.
is help others see their true potential,
Yeah,
and really what they can be, and being able to help do that with
yeah.
franchising.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Our missions are just so aligned, and it's just thank you so much for your hour today. First of all, this was awesome. Like I said, our phone call was awesome. You can hear the passion through the phone, and I think what you said is so powerful and something that I really agree with. Everyone has that story. A lot of people just can't figure out that story yet, and
Mhm.
they kind of go, the days pass by, and they're still kind of figuring out what is that story. And it's really just a matter of kind of taking that action, trying new things, and you start to evolve that story. So I think and this was not scripted, anyone, but I do think that's a great way to kind of wrap it up with, everyone has that story, and franchising really allows you to find that story, whether, you're someone coming out of college trying to look for your purpose. Something that always stood out to me is how positive everyone is in the franchising world. Everyone's so open arms and welcoming the growth opportunities that we spoke about. Or if you are in corporate America and you feel like you don't have that purpose, you're looking for something else, you want to take control of your future, franchising really allows you to start a new story, rewrite that story. But everyone has a story, and franchising really allows you to create that story and create that generational wealth, combine the passion with the profit. So I appreciate everyone's time today. If you made it through the full hour, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, help out the algorithm so that we can start to get more people educated on franchising, help people take control of their future. But Jenna, I definitely appreciate your time today. I really appreciate everything that you said. I think you dropped a lot of gold for the viewers. I think they learned a lot. And hopefully we'll do this again.
Thanks so much, Josh. I appreciate it.
Thank you.